Welcome to ACC Nation. I'm Jim, and that's Will, who is celebrating his 10th anniversary with his wife, Sammy. They're getting ready to go and have some fun this week and have some time off and spend time together. And congratulations, man. All of us wish you the best and are, just happy as all get out for you, man.
Well, thank you. It's really exciting to get away for a few days. We're going to go up and visit the Duluth up north in Minnesota, and it's going to be really cold, but excited to get away for a few days. I mean, we're going to miss our little doggo, but he'll be in great hands with the in-laws.
That's right. That's exciting. 10 years, man. Wow.
Yeah, I know.
Good. Very cool. And a lot of times you come down to our neck of the woods and celebrate, and that's always been fun.
Yeah,
for us too. But
yeah.
we'll get you back down. We'll get through all this nonsense, and we'll get you back down here, and we'll have the let's see, the M&Ms and Cheetos. Is that the Puffs? The Puffs.
It's the Puffs. Yeah. So I should probably explain this. So our yearly tradition is for breakfast on the morning of our anniversary, we have Cheeto Puffs and M&Ms for breakfast. And that is because that was our breakfast on the morning of our wedding. See, we got married in Vegas, and I think on that morning, it was actually the same morning when Kim Kardashian and Chris Humphries were supposedly going to divorce. So I don't know why I remember that, but whatever. But yeah, we were just kind of feeling lazy that morning, and that's what we had in our hotel room in Vegas, just laying around. So instead of going out to breakfast, we just ended up sitting in our hotel room and eating that. We've done that every Halloween for the past 10 years. So
I think it's only appropriate.
and if the people who know me know that is well within our randomness in our marriage.
Yeah, random, definitely. Yeah, that's a good word that applies to both of you. That's but we love you to death, and congratulations, man.
Thank you.
All right, let's take a look at our top 25 oopsies and, of course, a wrap of ACC football. But first, let's talk about some ACC sports action. The ACC cross-country championships kicked off the weekend with Notre Dame taking the men's trophy, NC State the women's title. The ACC field hockey championship gets underway, the 4th, 5th, and 7th at Syracuse. ACC men's and women's soccer championship action begins this week. We'll have details of how all of these sports are laid out and the competition for you at accnation.net. Now, this is something near and dear to you. Will the USCHO hockey polls have Boston College men at number 9, Notre Dame at number 14? On the women's side, Boston College is ranked number 4. It's interesting, as always, to see who's at the top of those charts, and maybe we'll share that on the website as well. Usually we do. Now, how about those top 25 oopsies? Look, you would think by now that those things would be tailing off, but no, we got to have lots of upsets every week. So let's just dive right back into them. The first one is, I'm going to preface it with this question. Will Jim Harbaugh ever just go away?
No.
Yeah, that's the simple answer right there.
Unless he has a down year and loses another down year and loses to Ohio State in pretty, bad fashion, get it handed to him. But
yeah, he's pretty locked in. Number 8, Michigan State over number 6, Michigan. Final score there, 37-33. Number 17, Pitt was upended. We'll have more on that in a moment. West Virginia, hey, Mountaineers knocked off number 22, Iowa State, 38-31. That was a big win for West Virginia. Congratulations. Number 18, Auburn. They're riding a really nice late season wave. They bumped number 10, Ole Miss, 31-20. I think Ole Miss was overrated. That's my personal belief. It sort of ties in with a little some other things that are going on there. But let's go on. Houston delivered a big win over number 19 SMU, 44-37. Number 12 Kentucky, another team I think that is at number 12, seriously overrated, hammered by unranked Mississippi State, 31-17. That's not an anomaly loss, folks. This is telling you who they are. It's just that simple.
But then again, I can tell you this is also the randomness of Mississippi State, because they can jump up and get you on a random week when they have that offense going.
Yeah.
And we've seen that with when they handled NC State earlier in the season too.
True. And here's the thing: when you have these sort of wins by Mississippi State, you know, when you look back at that NC State loss, you go, okay, this is really going to hurt NC State, because we don't, what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, right. But then when Mississippi State comes along and knocks off number 12, it actually makes NC State look better.
Mm-hmm.
So
because they can go jump up and beat a borderline top 10 team on a given week.
That's right. So anyway, interesting losses there. Unranked Fresno State rolled to a 30-20 win over number 21 San Diego State. We talk about these West Coast teams. It seems frequently on the
yeah. So on one of the games you mentioned earlier, it was on right in front of the Virginia game last night, and it was the Houston SMU game. Man, what a finish to that one! A kick return touchdown that sealed it. How about that? Was some crazy stuff. And big, SMU, that was their first loss of the season.
It was a fun game to watch.
Yeah,
we were force fed it.
We were force fed it,
but it was worth it.
Yeah.
It's like when you're a kid and you
eat your vegetables. Yeah, the airplane.
Yeah. So it was good for you. Eventually you grow up to like that food one way or the other. Anyway, among ACC teams, Wake, the Pack, Panthers, and Hoos have all locked in a bowl bid. They are the top two teams from the Atlantic and Coastal divisions, respectively. Crazy season. That's all I can say. It's topsy-turvy, and teams are coming on late in the season. It'll be interesting to see how this all wraps up in the next couple of weeks. Clemson can grab a bowl bid with a win over Louisville this coming week. Syracuse is one game away from a bowl bid. They have to play Louisville, NC State, and Pitt. The last three games on their schedule, but that's after a bye week. So, and Syracuse had a very nice win. I think far more demonstrative of who they really are, or who they could be. We're not really sure just yet. We'll get to that in a moment. First game is the upset of number 17 Pitt. Here's a team that's coming back. Started out with unbelievable expectations, which were just off the chart. And who knows who votes for this kind of nonsense. But Miami, and I can understand the hype around De'Aaron King and whatnot. I get that. But still, that team was not all that in a biscuit early in the season. They just weren't. But they have been finding their way here. In the last few games, they have begun to click. And I really watched closely. They're not there yet, but I'll tell you what, Miami's got a lot of potential. And if they roll off a couple of wins here, they're definitely going to be in a bowl. But I think this team, because they've got a lot of youngins, if they bring that back next season, we can seriously talk about this team ought to be ranked next season and believe it. So Miami 38, Pitt 34, the final.
I'll get to the Pitt side, but we should address the Miami side first, because what we've seen these last two games from Tyler Van Dyke, and you kind of talked about it, if they bring this team back next year, the way they're currently constituted, this is a team you can't talk about as a potential coastal favorite. Now let's hold off on the U being back, folks. This is, 2 games, and it's a 2-game sample size where they beat, NC State at home, which is a good win, and beating a Pitt team I've been telling everyone for weeks is nowhere near as good as they as you think they were, and I laid it out even especially last week when leading into this game, they hadn't faced the top 50 pass defense all season, or pass offense, excuse me. And the best one they had faced was Western Michigan, who beat them. And here we go again. They actually faced a really good, passing offense, even through, going through De'Ara King and now into Tyler Van Dyke. Van Dyke went for 428 yards in this game, um, 32 of 42 passing, only threw 1 pick. So you've seen his progression ever since he got the start against Virginia, that he is feeling more comfortable in this offense. He looks like he now, even in what 4 games that he's played, he looks like he's been there for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
The only thing is I still see a lot of drops from the receivers. I know I was in and out of this game, and it just felt like every time he would, I would look up, somebody was dropping a ball. I know Charleston Rambo had a couple of drops, but he still had a nice game with 100 yards receiving. Um, Miami is looking, like, see, these last couple of weeks, they look like they're looking like a team that we should really keep an eye on going into next year. Kenny Pickett in the loss, 519 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks. Very Brennan Armstrong against UNC type numbers. And I've never disrespected Kenny Pickett. Obviously, he is really, really good. It's my whole beef has been with the defense being a bit overrated. And I just felt like they were going to get beat, but the offense, we know, can do just about whatever it wants. And they still are a game up in the Coastal on Virginia, and we'll get to Virginia later, but that's with what happened late in the game yesterday, or in that game overnight, you know Pitt still may be in the driver's seat in the Coastal.
We'll see. We have a couple of games left to determine.
Yeah.
We'll see. Yeah, I tell you what, I'm very encouraged with Miami, and it felt to me like Pitt was back in its old habits.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, this was no, how we went from Clemsoning to pitting. I
right.
don't think this was pitting, but for the record, this was just Miami. Like I said, I think this says a little more about Miami than it does Pitt. Yes, I like to feel vindicated by it, but I also at the same time feel like that Miami might have something here.
Yeah. Let's make no bones about it here for a moment, folks. Both of those teams are pretty solid if you really step back for just a moment. And to have a 38-34 battle like that says a lot.
And we shouldn't discount the fact that Miami is technically 1 game out in the loss column.
Right. So keep an eye on them. We'll see where that goes. Our next is the Battle of the Techs, Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech. And just when you want to write off the Hokies and you feel like the Yellow Jackets are doing something right, both teams just absolutely come out and turn that whole idea on its head. Virginia Tech over Georgia Tech, 26-17 final score.
Yeah, and the chatter after the game, people have been a little bit frustrated with Jeff Collins, but feels like the noise is getting louder. It feels like this team continues to make the same mistakes over and over again. You're starting to wonder if this is going to work out. Obviously, he's had almost 3 years to build this program, and it doesn't look like they're going to be making a bowl this year again. Yeah, even with some of the efforts they've put out. I mean, obviously, losing to Northern Illinois at the beginning of the season isn't, kind of looms. But then again, Northern Illinois is a bowl team who nobody expected to be as good as they were at the beginning of the year. But, some of these other losses, have been kind of a head scratcher. I mean, this game was pretty close. I mean, there was 23-17 late and they're into the fourth quarter. And then Tech went on a soul-sucking 12-play, 85-yard drive that took up 7 minutes of the clock that made it the final score 26-17. And a lot of that is because over the last couple of weeks, Justin Fuente has been a little more hands-on with the offense, and there's much improvement in that Virginia Tech offense. I mean, they ran for 237 yards in this game between Malachi Thomas and Raheem Blackshear. Burmeister had a decent game, 254 yards passing and 2 touchdowns. Tech is, they lost last week, and who knows if this means anything with the uptick in offense the last couple of weeks. It might be too little, too late to save Fuente's job. But if they start getting on a roll again, maybe he ends up saving his job again. We could have a role reversal.
That's an interesting prospect of saving his job again. I like that. Here's what they have coming up. Boston College this week, Friday, Duke, Miami, and Virginia. And I think where the nail in the coffin would be is if they lose to Virginia.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of this season rides on whether or not they beat Virginia. And like I said, we'll get into Virginia a little later. But I mean, we got to be realistic at the same time. Every single one of those games on Virginia Tech's schedule is winnable. So it's not like they're done.
I say that for Virginia Tech, that's 2 out of 4.
Yeah, if they finish 2-2, hey, that could happen. I mean, they could lose. They could also lose all 4 of those games too. But
I don't see that happening.
I don't think they will. But it can happen.
I just can't see if Miami keeps playing the way they are, and Virginia's offense is just screaming, memes crazy. Of course, if with this injury to Brennan Armstrong, if he's out for the rest of the season, that could turn this game totally around too. So something to think about. I don't think he will. Will and I were talking about that before we started recording. And from my perspective, now this is not a medical professional talking here. I'm a former EMT. So a lot of similar injuries to this, worked a lot in sports stuff. I've cracked my ribs, so I know what that's like. I think he just cracked his ribs. I don't think it was anything major. Now, will he come back in next week? Yeah, that's anybody's question. But I think after, if you wrap it up really good, and you put the right type of protection around it, he may sit out a week. I think he'll be back. Now he won't be scrambling quite as much. I don't think just for protection purposes.
Yeah.
But I think he'll be back. We'll see. I would hope to see him back because I love watching him play. And there was a lot of really serious talk last night in that game about his potential for being on a Heisman list. And I agree with that. I think that they should be looking closely at him, his numbers, and at least consider him a lot more than maybe a couple of the other people that are on that list who I've just scratched my head over, to be honest with you. Syracuse, this is a team coming back or finding itself. I'm not sure which, but it's nice to see because quite honestly, I think Dino Babers' butt was on a hot seat. I think it was all that. I think that biscuit was buttered and ready to go, man. That's how I feel about that. And I think if Syracuse can finally get into some kind of rhythm and make something happen here, Dino Babers continues to be the coach. Syracuse over Boston College, 21-6.
If you want to talk about a situation where one quarter changes the entire outcome of a game, it was this one in the third quarter. Um, Syracuse outscored BC 21-3 in that game, despite the fact that it only ran 9 plays, and they in the third quarter BC ran 24 plays, but they just, Syracuse's run game once again had a big deal. It was 51. It was the third quarter was a 51-yard run by Sean Tucker and a 48-yard run by Garrett Schrader, um, who is been kind of the reason for Syracuse's resurgence. And you mentioned it, they're one away from bowl eligibility, and I was talking about this yesterday. They were the worst team in the league, according to a lot of people in the preseason. Here they are, one win away from bowl eligibility. And a lot of it, and like I say, Dino Babers probably is saving his job as a result of this quarterback change. Now, I mean, it really helps to have arguably the best running back in the ACC and Sean Tucker in the backfield, 207 yards and a touchdown in this one. We can continue to heap praise on the Syracuse offense because they obviously have found something with this run game where they're just gonna jam it down your throat and dare you to stop it. Doesn't matter how bad they are in the passing game. I mean, Schrader was 5 of 14 passing in this game, but it didn't matter.
Yeah.
Now passing on the other side of the field, that's a big problem. BC went with the 2 quarterbacks in this game, which obviously means you have none. If pretty much every team except for those teams from about 12 years ago in Florida with Chris Leak and Tim Tebow, but every other time when you do this, it just doesn't work. I mean, they started with Dennis Grosel. They brought in a freshman, Emmett Moorhead. They combined to go 15 of 32 for 180 yards. Moorhead was 6 of 15. Grosel was only 9 of 17, but they only had 251 yards offense in this game, and that generally is not going to get it done. And I'll tell you what, if I'm a quarterback who's looking to transfer right now, because I don't know if Phil Jurkovic's going to come back next season. So if there's a spot right there for a good quarterback to go, if they want to look at an opportunity to play with some good talent on offense. I mean, we know Zay Flowers is a really good player. He can start get an offense going on a dime if you can get him the football. But they just don't have the right person for this offense right now because Jurkovic is hurt. And this is, Hafley is a great coach, but he's kind of stymied by what he has there in terms of talent.
Yeah, pull that one linchpin there, and it seemed like everything just kind of fell apart, which is a shame because Boston College, we were really high on Boston College at the beginning of the season, and I think rightfully so that everybody was hyped on this team. But once that injury occurred, it was like, oh boy, and you just saw everything sort of fade away. This isn't a reflection of this team as a whole. Again, there's tons of talent there, and a lot of it will be back. And plus you have Hafley as a coach. You're right, Will. Boy, if I were a quarterback and I wasn't getting playing time someplace, and I'd be looking into knocking on a door and saying, hey, I'm interested. I'll be more than glad to talk to you. Do I have what you guys are looking for? And that it's a great school. And just do a little plug here. It's a great school, great environment, an up and coming program, and an opportunity to get exposure in a major television market. Hello, you can't go wrong with something like that. All right, our next game, Clemson over Florida State, misleading score. Okay, 30-20. It was so much closer than this. This was this was really a good game from the standpoint of competitiveness. And one of the things that stood out to me, the announcers in this game said, man, they were specifically talking about Clemson at the time, but I thought this applies to both teams. These players are bringing everything to this game. And I'm going, yeah, they are. And with good reason. There's a lot of pride in there, and they're good at what they do. It was fun to watch this game.
Condolences to everyone who took FSU +9 in the gambling line. That was I said this yesterday, that this was probably the worst beat of a for a gambler since the Abilene Christian Virginia game at the end of last season, when there was the pick six on the final play that allowed Virginia to cover the spread. But yeah, like Jim said, this game was much, much closer. This was 23-20 until the final play of the game, when Florida State did the old chuck it around the field and hope for a random miracle, but ended up being fumbled and picked up and run back for a touchdown. Clemson, congratulations for scoring 20 points in a game against an FBS opponent in regulation for the first time this year. Yay!
How about that?
And you know what they did? They ran the football, which they should have been doing a lot more. Now, it really helps to have Will Shipley back and healthy, because he's a stud. 25 carries, 128 yards, 2 touchdowns. Phil Mafas had 69 as well. So they ran for 188 yards in this game, average 4 yards per carry. This is what they need to be doing. Take some off of DJ Uyangale's plate. They ran 74 plays in this game. That's a little high, but I don't think DJ should be throwing 30 times in a game. They need to be more of like a 60-40 run team, something to that effect. And I think they'll do a lot better. This defense is still really good. They held Florida State to 1.9 yards per carry. We've seen what Florida State's rushing attack can do. Jordan Travis was sacked 6 times yesterday. So as a result, he had 16 carries for -4 yards. But he's still, it's a tough defense to play. Great effort by Florida State. I know, we were talking, you and I were talking to our friend Chris in our chat yesterday, and he was feeling pretty good about the game. It kind of went how we thought it would. It was going to be close throughout. And like you said, the score doesn't dictate how close it actually was.
Exactly. I feel so much better about this conference as a whole. As when this season started, there were a lot of frustrations, a lot of disappointments, Clemson being one of them. But as the season has gone on, there have been a number of teams which have emerged, more than a handful here, that are promising, that look really good, that have a lot of young players coming back for next season. I'm just really pumped up about where the ACC is going football wise. And we'll see how it all ends up, especially with bowl games, because I think that's an important indicator of really what you have and what might be there next year. Not much to say about this next game other than, Wake Forest 45, Duke 7. Another big win for Wake Forest for their schedule, for their record. And can they run it all, their schedule? Probably. Looks like it. Duke, aside from, they have some really good pieces there. Mm-hmm. It's frustrating to watch a team that year after year has one or two really good pieces player wise, and they just never seem to improve. So
It's tough because in their last two games they've been outscored 93-7.
That's just painful.
Yeah, and you talked about all these pieces that they have the one piece or whatever, and obviously Mateo Durant is that one, and he's been pretty much the only reason you watch Duke football. I mean, he had 100 yards rushing in this game on 20 carries. That's a nice game, and
Mhm.
it's just when you're facing the juggernaut that is Wake Forest, you're going to have a tough time, stopping them. And this was no different. I mean, Sam Hartman had 400 yards and three touchdowns, and I thought it was funny that I was watching a little bit of this game yesterday, and obviously this was going on. This game started right after Pitt lost, and all of a sudden they started bringing up Sam Hartman in the Heisman race, which
Uh-huh.
I thought it was funny because I feel like he should have been in the discussion all along, but maybe it's just because I don't watch much ESPN, but never heard a peep about out of him in the Heisman discussion until yesterday, and he should have been in there all along. I don't think he's going to be the person someone you see in New York City in the finals, in December, but he's someone who garners consideration for sure. And I think if I remember correctly, I think they vote the top 10 or something like that, and he will show up if at this rate he will show up on some people's ballots. Now you talked about the schedule. This upcoming game is kind of the one we've been circling as okay, what is it? What is Wake? Can they do this? It's North Carolina in a non-conference game. And North Carolina is still a good offense, and but I haven't seen anybody stop Wake on offense yet this year. So this is going to be a real fun game. I'm excited to see it.
One thing I will say about Hartman, I had a piece a couple weeks ago, I think, talking about the ACC players that were on the list from the standpoint of the odds makers, and Hartman and Howell were both on there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was Pickett, Hartman, and Howell, and that was it, I believe. And then the following week there was a USA Today column that came out, and Brennan Armstrong was being touted in that. So there are several quarterbacks I think worthy of the conversation, of being included in the conversation. The one thing again that and I know I beat this dead horse constantly. Wake Forest is not in a major media market. They do not get the exposure I think they deserve. They fly under the radar because of it. They don't have that track record that it's like an Auburn. Auburn just sort of gets a lot of traction because, well, they're in the SEC and they've been there before and all that. And so they get more media coverage. Wake Forest is sort of like,
Who?
yeah, that's, and see, now I constantly put that on the school. Because really a lot of any kind of hype starts with an SID. It has to be, you have to, as a sports information director, of course they don't have that. A lot of schools don't have that title anymore per se,
Mm-hmm.
but the people who are in those roles, they need to have connections with folks in bigger markets, in bigger media, and constantly need to fuel this. They need to pump it constantly. So you remember the quarterback that used to be at Wake Forest who transferred to Georgia, and suddenly he was a Heisman candidate. And of course, he never played. So it just, but see, that's an example right there of what I'm talking about, is that how you can take a quarterback from Wake Forest who never got any consideration whatsoever for Heisman. He transfers to Georgia, and suddenly, praise be, brothers and sisters, he is a
And
Heisman
yeah,
candidate.
and then people forget the guy that guy was beaten out by the current quarterback when said quarterback was a freshman. And speaking of, we should, funny, former Wake Forest running back is among the Heisman favorites right now too, and Kenneth Walker, who's at Michigan State.
That's right.
It's not an indictment on Wake. It's just he was just that good all along. But
He
with
was.
the way Clausen likes to use the two backs, he wasn't going to, put up the kind of numbers he is currently at Michigan State.
Right. And if you have a desire to move forward and get into the NFL, and there's been plenty of people who've come out of Wake who've gone on to the NFL and have done very well and get a lot of chatter. But at the same time, it's all about competition, being out in front of people, getting the exposure. So it's very critical that you go to a school, to a conference that is pumping the crap out of your name and who you are and what you're capable of doing, and elevating your name, your status, your cachet among the NFL and media. And again, I don't see it happening with players at Wake the way it should be. I still blame it on people there at the school, and I think that needs to be addressed in some fashion. I think it's unfair to that program and those players, because they deserve the recognition. They don't get it. They don't get it. And some of that falls on we as media people to talk more about it and to pay a little more attention. We talk about it, and I don't know what to say. I beat this dead horse constantly, and I just think it falls on deaf ears. I don't think anything has changed over the last couple of years, and I don't think it's going to change. So
yeah, I know. And the reality is Wake has never been a traditional, traditionally really good football school either. So that kind of hurts them a little bit, even though they've been a really consistent program. And I don't think, Winston-Salem doesn't exactly have the name cachet that a lot of these other cities do, I'm afraid. Granted, it's a nice, I'm sure it's a nice city. I've never been there, but
it is. It's a really nice area. As a matter of fact, I actually thought about moving there at one time. The thing is that, again, I can throw out the Winston-Salem. It's not that it is a fairly big community population wise. So I just think that you hear more talk about Brennan Armstrong, more chatter, more feed coming from a community that's probably not even half the size in Charlottesville.
Yeah.
What's their largest city that's nearby? Well, it's where I am.
Yeah.
And then to the north, several hours away, is DC. So again, anyway, let's move on, because I'm this.
Yeah, I was looking at it while you were talking. The population of Winston-Salem's almost 250,000.
Yeah.
Charlottesville's less than 50,000.
Yeah.
That's like the city in Minnesota I live in has a higher population than Charlottesville.
Okay. All right. NC State over Louisville, 28-13. Whew.
Well, I was talking about the Boston College Louisville game, or Syracuse game, excuse me, earlier, and talked about how one quarter makes a difference in the game, and this was the case here with this one. NC State outscored Louisville 21-3 in the fourth quarter, outgained them by quite a bit, 156-55, which really put a was a huge difference in this game. This game was actually 10-7 Louisville going into the fourth quarter. A big game from Devin Leary, 317 yards and 4 touchdowns. Obviously, a lot of that came late, as I mentioned, in the fourth quarter. And I got to give them credit, because NC State, they have a really good rushing attack usually, but they only had 44 yards rushing and 1.8 yards per carry in this game. So they relied on Devin Leary to really make a difference, and he stepped up, and that's big on him. Defense, it was decent. I mean, Malik Cunningham was 11 of 28 passing in this game, but they could not stop the run. Louisville ran for 215 yards in this game, averaged 5 yards per carry. But we got to be fair. I mean, NC State has been decimated by injuries on defense. I mean, they've lost like their top 3 or 4 defenders this season due to injury. So they're playing a lot of people who would normally not be starters, but they're finding ways to win. State is, they're still, in second place in the Atlantic Division, but yeah, it's gonna be a little tough tough end of the season, but this is still, I would say, argue, is a pretty successful season for NC State given where they are. I think, but I also understand if people felt like there's more there, because they could have easily beaten Miami last week. And I'll listen to that argument, but I mean, even the Mississippi State game. I mean, that game, a lot of people will say was closer than the score indicates, but still, good season so far. And Louisville, I still think, has a shot at a bowl. I mean, they're playing better than a lot of us expected. I figured after the way last season went, the Satterfield, and his flirtation with another job, figured people probably wouldn't, respect him as much, but they're playing for him. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, Louisville does look a lot better. Even though they had a loss in this game, they are playing better. I think there's growth there, and there's a lot of potential. If it keeps going in this direction, again, we're talking next year primarily. NC State, the injury bug, yeah, that has really hurt them. And unfortunately, I think their season sort of feels like it's going to tail off here. I hope that's not the case. I hope some of these guys that are stepping up into replacement roles can get in the groove and keep that machine going, because Dave Doran had a really good thing going at the beginning of the season. There he is.
Their final 4 games are at Florida State, at Wake, Syracuse at home, and home for UNC. I mean, really, they could come out. I mean, 3-1 is definitely possible out of that final 4-game stretch. It's not like a lock, but they'll probably be favored in at least 2 to 3.
I would think. Yeah, should be. We'll see how that season ends up for the Pack. And I know that fans, it was so nice to see the stadium so full and so loud and so into that game. That was marvelous. Yeah. That's what football is about. And I got to say the same thing about the Pitt game. The crowd was really into that game, and I was telling my wife, I said, hey, this is what Northeast football is about that hard scrapping Pittsburgh football type of game. That was kind of neat to see. Brought back some great memories of games involving Pennsylvania and Ohio teams, and it's fun to watch. So NC State, you guys keep packing the stadium like that, man. It does wonders for your team. It's a great recruitment tool, and as a fan of football, I love seeing that. I love the noise. I love people having a good time, and that was just cranking. Next game, Notre Dame over UNC 44-34. An interesting battle. It was a fun game to watch up to a certain degree, but there were a couple of things that were happening here that I still have some questions about.
I didn't expect there to be as much offense in this game as there was. I mean, North Carolina outgained Notre Dame 564 to 523 in this game. Both teams ran the ball really well. Notre Dame ran for 293 yards, Carolina for 223. Kyron Williams had 199 yards on the ground and a 91-yard touchdown. That was pretty slick. I mean, I'm trying to remember how it went. He was going one way, but the lane was filled, so he reversed field and found a hole and outran the UNC defense for that touchdown. It's a great play, and it shows he has that ability, and it just he had a hard time getting going this season, really. Uh, they mostly relied on Jack Cohn in this game. 16 of 24, 213 yards. That's not bad. I mean, they said they ran the ball a lot in this game, which they obviously with the success they had on the ground. Why not just keep doing what is successful? Carolina's Sam Hartman threw for 341 yards, ran for 101 more. Josh Downs, a stud, 10 catches, 142 yards. He's been a problem for secondaries all season long. Notre Dame, they say they continue to win games, and they have Navy coming up next week, which they'll be a favorite in, and then they take on Virginia, and that's going to be an interesting game because you're going to be coming off a tough Navy team who obviously almost who gave Cincinnati a game a couple of weeks ago, and there tends to be like what they call a body blow game after after facing Navy, but then again they're going up against the Virginia defense. So
yeah, that remains to be seen. It could that could end up being just like the BYU UVA game, which wrapped up Sunday morning.
Let's see, from moment we're recording, it ended probably about 8.5 hours ago.
Yeah. And wow, I tell you what, amazingly enough, I've only had maybe an eighth of a cup of coffee, but I know I'm going to feel this as the day progresses. Mm-hmm. I stayed with this game until to the end. I thought it was worth watching even right down to the clock at 0. It was worth watching every bit of this game. Tell you what, for fans who were attempting to watch, and as we were talking earlier, there was another game on that superseded this one. You had to go to the app. A lot of people were confused about how to find it on the app. I will just say that because I'm so used to going into the app on a regular basis and maneuvering through that, I think that ESPN's app is a little funky in some ways.
Yeah.
It's not user friendly in some fashion. It probably should be addressed.
I agree.
But I knew it was there. I found it. I didn't have any issues with that. I know a lot of people who probably are a heck of a lot smarter than me were struggling to find it. But like I said, it's sort of because I do it so often, it's probably easier for me to find stuff like that just out of habit. And until the game came on, there we were looking at a score. And I know that when you tweeted this out, it was sort of like, I'm sure everybody just their jaws dropped. It was 21-0 BYU. And it was a staggering. You just didn't expect that at the opening of this game.
Yeah.
And BYU, I think, was smart enough that this is one of those games when you get into a battle with an offensive power, you better strike as quickly as you can and put as many points up on the board as you can, because as we're about to hear, 21-0 was nothing for Virginia.
Yeah. Well, yeah, BYU's MO has been, they've been a team that gets out early on opponents, but they always kind of come back to the pack as the game progresses. And that's exactly what happened. They say they got up 21-0. And by halftime, it was 42-38 Virginia. But unfortunately, and Virginia was up 49-45 at the end of the third quarter. But then unfortunately, the fourth quarter happened. The thing of it is this is the one of the biggest concerns I had about this game was I just felt like they were not going to be able to stop BYU in the ground, which Virginia hasn't been able to do that on the ground all season anyways, but I thought that was the case here, and they let Tyler Algier go for 266 and 5 touchdowns, 385 yards rushing on the ground, gave up 734 yards to BYU and 66 points. I mean, if you would have told me BYU beat Virginia in basketball 66-49, I could understand. They probably had an off shooting night and an off defensive night, but this is it's a pathetic performance by the Virginia offense. And like I said, Brennan Armstrong finally kind of got a national stage to show what he could do, and for sure through the first couple of quarters that he was front and center, and everybody's like, oh man, this guy is really good. Which everyone who's watched Virginia knows. But unfortunately, as Jim mentioned, he hurt himself in the fourth quarter. I think he was trying to run for a first down and landed funny, and what we probably cracked a rib. And then on the next play, he went back to pass and kind of underthrew it, and it was intercepted. And then he was pointing to his ribs, and he kept saying it was broken, but as you alluded, it's probably more likely cracked. But in that time, he threw for 337 yards and 4 touchdowns, and ran for 94 more. And this was early in the fourth quarter when he came out. And by that time, he had set a Virginia single season passing record. Just an unbelievable performance. They had to bring in Jay Woolfolk, and he had a couple nice throws, but was a little off too. He's a far better runner than he is a passer right now. But yeah, I'm just curious to see what his situation is going forward, whether or not he will be able to play again this season. That is going to be what we watch, because there's no doubt that Virginia's success has been largely in part due to Armstrong. And maybe they don't go to Woolfolk, maybe they try Thompson or Ira Armstead or Jacob Rodriguez there. I don't know. It's Virginia's on a bye next week, so they have plenty of time to figure it out and assess what the plan is going forward. I would expect Armstrong to miss some time. I'm hoping it's not the rest of the season. But even if you look at what Virginia was able to do, I mean, Keaton Thompson had 91 yards receiving, 9 catches. Dontavian Wicks is a stud because he had 4 catches for 125 yards. So the playmakers are there, but like I said, it all depends on the rest of Virginia's season depends on Brennan Armstrong's health.
I would think that, and let me just be a little more clear here. We get into the semantics of being cracked versus broke. I mean, you can say, well, a cracked rib is broken. I think of a broken rib as literally being snapped, and it has the potential of puncturing a lung or doing other damage. Okay, that's where I'm coming from. Just so the people who are watching and listening understand that. The thing that I think that will slow him down here is it was on his left side, which is his throwing arm. And so again, we need to keep a close eye on the progression here. I think he's going to be okay. That's just my gut feel, observation wise. And again, I'm not a medical professional. I just stayed at a Holiday Inn experience.
Yes. So. I was just going to say that too.
So BYU over UVA 66-49. Again, kind of misleading on the score because it almost sounds like it was a major blowout, but that game was neck and neck, at least for a couple of quarters and a half. And a fun game to watch. I got to say, talent on both sides of the ball here, except for the defense. Sorry, guys. My God. I mean, that many points in one game. Whoo, man. You're getting up there with that Wake Forest game that was before, and it's like, so anyway, that's a look at our schedule. And coming up next week, we've got a lot of interesting games, and opportunity for Clemson again to grab a bowl bid with a win over Louisville. And Louisville's not going to let that slide easily, and I can tell you that. So that should be an interesting game to watch. Again, Syracuse, a game away from a bowl bid. They've got, after a bye week, Louisville, NC State, Pitt left on their schedule. A lot of fun games, with the exception of Wake Forest, who is at the top of, their particular division. They're pretty much locked in there. The Coastal is sort of a, let's see what happens, and a run for the money, pretty much. So, and again, happy 10th anniversary to Will and to Sammy, and hope you guys enjoy yourself, and I know you will.
We will, and we're going to be going, like I said, we're going up on the North Shore to Duluth, and just touring northern Minnesota for the next few days. But looking at the weather forecast, the high temperatures may not make it to 40 in a couple of those days.
Thanks for joining us on ACC Nation. Follow us by subscribing on your favorite podcast or streaming radio platform, and on YouTube. We'd appreciate a 5-star rating while you're there. Visit our homepage at accnation.net and support us via PayPal. Keep up with the latest by following us on Google News. You can find ACC Nation on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Reddit, and Pinterest. Follow Will at Will's World MN, and I'm at ACC The Q. Cheers.
Score.